So there's our little intros here. As Travis mentioned, I've worked with hundreds of small business owners to help them get their books in order. And today I'm here to provide some information and tips for you folks to hopefully make your tax season as painless as possible. So quick outline of what we'll go over today. We'll obviously go through these in a little bit more detail, but some tax season tips, some important deadlines for your business, some deductions that are commonly missed for small businesses, especially for law firms, how to keep your Iolta in order and how to deal with it if you haven't been keeping in order, and a few tips on how to be prepared for next year. So before we dive right into things, I love to always start with the benefits of keeping your books in order. A lot of people don't know why bookkeeping matters, but once they start, they realize how beneficial it actually is. And I wanted to share some of that feedback that we get. So firstly, it gives you a clear picture of where your money is going. A lot of people don't realize where they're spending or even overspending. If you have multiple accounts and aren't balancing them out every month, it's really easy to lose track of things. Knowing where your money is going will provide some direction as to where you can cut back costs or understand where you can actually spend more. Also, it ensures that you don't miss out on deductions. So there are literally thousands of dollars in deductions that most small business owners can claim, and a lot of them get missed. And if you don't track them properly, you actually can't claim them. So these deductions are constantly changing, and we recommend working with a bookkeeper or tax pro rather than trying to stay on top of them yourself. There is little pieces of the deductions that change year over year, so don't try and figure it out all yourself. We have a really great blog article on this, and you can always connect with your CPA or bookkeeper, and they should know. As well, having bookkeeping can help you secure a business loan. So if you're looking for funding of any kind, and this includes even credit cards, banks want to make sure, obviously, that you are reliable and a safe investment for them. So they'll be looking at a number of things, and this includes your credit score, financial projections, business plans, cash flow history, and more. And the best way to be prepared is having your bookkeeping in order before you go to the bank. And a lot of those pieces will be covered by having appropriate bookkeeping done. As well, having bookkeeping can help you catch banking errors quickly. It doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. If you're a pro or constantly monitoring your books, this can be dealt with right away. So the sooner you deal with this, the easier it's going to be for you. And lastly, to better understand how you can grow your firm. So the things that you need to grow your business cost money, obviously. So having your finger on your finances will help you to understand if you can actually afford these things. And if not, where do you need to make those changes? So you'll better understand the cycles of your business and be able to determine if certain times of the year are better to make investments and so on. And the list goes on. But these are the main pain points that we see business owners that get excited about when they start bookkeeping. So next I wanted to chat about the cost of bookkeeping. So your business can't grow when you're stuck in the weeds with admin. Every minute spent on things like bookkeeping is time that could be spent on revenue generating activity. So the cost of a DIY accounting software relative to hiring a bookkeeper makes it pretty attractive at first glance. So for instance, a tool like Xero or QuickBooks typically starts at around $10 a month, going up to around $70 for their premium packages. So when comparing bookkeeping solutions, it's really important to factor in the cost of your own time. So for instance, if this subscription is going to cost you $50 a month, how much time will you spend using it per month, and how much is your own time worth? So let's say you bill your clients at $50 to $100 per hour. We'll say 50. Then let's say you spend 8 hours a month doing your bookkeeping. That's actually $400 worth of labor plus the $50 for the subscription. So you're still actually paying $450 a month for bookkeeping. And this could be an incentive for getting better at bookkeeping, so you spend less time per month doing it, or it could be a sign that you should just outsource the job. So next, we wanted to get into some tax season tips. So there's a bunch that I'm going to go over. And there's more details on our blog as well about all of these tips. I'm going to go through a lot right now. So the first one is to get your books in order and make sure your books are balanced. Without updated books, you actually can't file your taxes. So make sure all of your business transactions are recorded properly. Messing up your taxes because of a missing or erroneous transaction can be stressful, but it's also really easily avoidable. Make sure you're recording and categorizing each transaction as accurately and consistently as you can, whether that's doing it yourself or outsourcing the solution. Next is reconciling your bank accounts. Reconciling is just a fancy accounting term for making sure your books match your bank records. But doing this can save you and your CPA a lot of time and trouble at tax time. You can absolutely reconcile your books on your own or have a bookkeeper, but really make sure that it's done at the end of each month. The next tip is separating business and personal expenses as soon as possible. Not separating personal and business expenses can become a huge headache around tax time. It generally takes more time to sort through expenses when they're mixed up in one account and you might miss deductions. So if you're spending a lot of if you're spending your personal account and spending that on business transactions, you're going to have to go through each month and highlight which ones are business and which ones are personal, no matter who you're working with, whether that's a CPA or a bookkeeper or doing it yourself. And especially if you're not keeping up on your monthly books, you're going to have to go through at the end of the year and figure out which was a personal and which was a business expense. So we always recommend just opening a separate small business account and separating things out. The sooner the better. You'll save more time and more money in the long run. Next is talking to a professional. So doing everything yourself can be a great way to save money, but we really advise that you have an experienced CPA or tax pro take a look at your books. They can make sure you're set up properly and that you're taking advantage of the right year-end tax moves and that your business is going to be in good shape for tax season. Getting your deductions and paperwork organized. So a big part of the tax season scramble is hunting for receipts. If you don't have a receipt for proof, you actually can't deduct that item. The IRS requires this in case of an audit, and they require you to keep all business records for 3 years. So we always recommend digitizing them with either on your own through like a Dropbox, or there are a couple solutions out there that can do that for you, where you can literally just send in your physical receipts and they'll digitize them and make sure all of the information that the IRS requires is actually there for you for the next 3 years or for infinity. A lot of times receipts will fade really quickly, so definitely digitize them as soon as possible. And the last big tip for tax season is start putting money aside now. Rather than having to worry about a huge chunk for paying for your bookkeeping and your taxes and your tax preparation, it's always better to start putting it away throughout the year. And if you don't know how much you should be putting away, we always estimate 30% of your income. Now, this may seem like a lot, but taxes are a lot of money. So it's better to have a little bit too much. That way you can reinvest it come tax season. If you do have any additional money left over, you can reinvest it, put it in a rainy day fund, but it's better than being underprepared at tax time. So next, I wanted to go through a couple of the important deadlines for your business for tax time. We just passed the first deadline, which was January 31st, and this was for W-2 or 1099s, and this is the first round. So if you have any employees, these are the forms that need to be filed. However, there are different levels of W-2s and 1099s, so either check our blog or connect with your tax pro or bookkeeper to confirm specifically what date your 1099s need to be filed. The next date is coming up on March 16th, and this is if you are an S Corp or a partnership, and this is your deadline to file, as well as your deadline to file for an extension, and I'll chat about extensions in just a second here. And if you are a sole prop, an individual, or a corporation, then your deadline is going to be April 15th. As well, on the 15th, quarterly estimates are due. So if you aren't sure if you need to pay quarterly estimates or how much you need to pay, we actually have a really great tool on our website, or there are resources online on the IRS website that you can figure out if you need to pay, and if so, how much. So hopping back to the extensions, a lot of people don't realize this, but if you aren't ready for tax season, you can super easily file an extension. It takes about an hour. You can do it online, and it's completely free, and it's going to give you usually about an extra 6 months to file your taxes. So if you are pretty much prepared, we always recommend doing it by the deadline, just because you don't want that stress looming over your head for the next 6 months. But if you're completely not ready, you can file for an extension, and the extension deadline is the same as your tax deadline. Perfect. So next, we will talk about the 3 main ways that you can file your taxes. So you can file on your own online. However, depending on how your business is set up, the prices can vary greatly, and there isn't support if you need help with questions if you choose a DIY solution. So there are free file fillable forms. It's a mouthful, and it only works for the current tax year, so you can't use them to file if you owe any back taxes, and this is only for federal taxes, not state taxes. And using these forms only makes sense if you are experienced and if you're comfortable with filing your own business taxes, and if they aren't too complex, because as I said, there's no support there, so you really have to understand what you're doing. The next option is to file through a CPA. So they will get everything in order to ensure you're filed on time and accurately. CPAs do charge hourly, so this price can go up pretty quickly. As well, if you don't have your bookkeeping up to date and they have to complete it, that can really add to the cost and make it go up quite a bit. And the last recommendation for filing is through a product like Bench Tax. So we work with outsourced CPAs to prepare and file your taxes from your Bench books. So you do have to have your bookkeeping done through Bench in order to do this, but we can do a year's worth of work in about 3 to 4 weeks. It's really affordable, especially compared to industry standards with CPAs. And it is less work for you than an in-person CPA, because your Bench bookkeeper actually does all the heavy lifting and provides insight to the Bench Tax team, so you don't have to be the middleman. So next, I wanted to chat about some deductions that we often see getting missed. Hopefully, some of these relate directly to your law firm as well. So equipment is a big one. So if you buy any equipment, office furniture, computers, anything like that, you can deduct those. Education, so as long as it relates to your business, you can deduct a lot of education costs. Business use of a vehicle, so this would be if you are driving to a client meeting, that sort of thing, you can deduct a portion of your business, of your vehicle. There are rules for these, so again, this is always best to refer to a CPA or a bookkeeper on exactly how much you can deduct. You can also deduct subscriptions and memberships, so potentially your membership to a bar association, that sort of thing. Bank fees, so as I mentioned before, having separate bank accounts and credit cards for your business is always a good idea. If your bank or credit card company charges annually or monthly service charges, any transfer fees, overdraft fees, those are all deductible. You can also deduct merchant or transaction fees paid to a third-party payment processor. So if you use PayPal or Stripe or LawPay, you can deduct any of those. You, however, cannot deduct fees related to your personal bank accounts or credit cards, so just another reason to open up your separate bank accounts. Travel, entertainment, and meals. You can also deduct 50% of the cost of providing meals to employees. Meals provided at office parties and picnics are 100% deductible. And if you're going out for client meals or any sort of things like that, be sure to keep documentation for that outing, and that includes the amount of each expense, so that should be on the receipt, the date and place of the meal, and the business relationship of the person that you dined with. A good way to do this is to record the purpose of the meal and what you discussed just on the back of the receipt. And the last one, there are hundreds of deductions out there, but the last one I'm going to go over is retirement contributions. You can deduct contributions to your employee retirement accounts as a business expense, as well as to your own retirement funds. The amount you can deduct depends on the type of plan that you have, so check out the IRS tips for calculating your own retirement plan contribution. And there were a couple ones that I came across that were interesting that you cannot deduct. So any gifts that are over $25, you cannot deduct. Fines and penalties, so that means any like parking tickets that you have during a business meeting, any penalties for not filing your taxes on time, those are not deductible. However, bookkeeping and tax preparation fees are deductible. And lastly, political contributions are not deductible either. So other important topics for lawyers, one thing that we get asked a lot about is Iolta accounts. And we see a lot of common mistakes that happen. People don't necessarily know that they're misusing their Iolta account. So I wanted to go through the top 5 mistakes that lawyers might make with Ioltas and how to avoid them or how to deal with them if you have made those mistakes. So the first one is borrowing money from the Iolta. Attorneys cannot, under any circumstances, withdraw fees from an Iolta account before earning those fees. So this is sometimes referred to as borrowing, and attorneys do it for many reasons, because they have cash flow problems, they have unexpected expenses, or simply because they've just told themselves that they'll replace the funds right away. Whatever the reason, borrowing from an Iolta account carries really stiff penalties and is one of the most common ways to get disbarred. The second tip is failing to keep your client and business accounts separate. So trust accounts need to be sacred and they need to be separated 100%. You can't, for example, pay for your firm's operating expenses directly out of an Iolta account. You need to move those funds into a business account first. Some firms will also intentionally use their Iolta accounts to hide assets, or will leave funds in their Iolta even after they've been earned, using it as a savings account. Regardless of which state you're in, you cannot under any circumstance use an Iolta account as a savings account or as an operating account, even if the money that you withdraw from the Iolta has been earned already. So if you want to withdraw money, if you need to use that money, move it from your Iolta into your business account, and then you can spend it out of there. And the bookkeepers or your tax professional will be able to work with you to properly track that and have proper records if you do get tapped on the shoulder by the Bar Association to provide those. The third tip is charging clients for payment fees. If you've made the switch from paper checks to electronic billing, so if you do e-transfers, credit card payments, that kind of thing, you cannot pass along the payment fees to your client's Iolta. Some Iolta-friendly merchants like LawPay will charge fees separately to your firm's operating account while depositing funds to the Iolta account. If your merchant is not Iolta friendly, however, these fees can become really hard to track, causing you to charge the wrong client's account. So really chat with your merchant processor, chat with your bookkeeper, make sure this isn't happening. And to prevent misappropriating funds from other clients, remember to only charge your clients for fees directly relating to their trust account. The fourth item is recording a trust deposit as income. So some firms find it tempting to record a trust deposit as income in their accounting software for simplicity's sake, but this should not be the case. The funds deposited in your client's account do not belong to you. In fact, they are funds that you owe your clients. Recording them as anything but that could land you in hot water with regulators and mess up your taxes. And the last mistake that we see quite often with Ioltas is bad record keeping. So let's say that one day you discover a small shortfall in your Iolta account and you can't figure out how it got there. and you think to yourself, oh, it's a small enough amount, it shouldn't matter, it's only $5, but this does completely matter. Every single transaction in and out of your Iolta must be accounted for, no matter how small it is, and you should be able to supply accurate and up-to-date records for all of your accounts if the state bar requests it, not just your Iolta, but all of your accounts. So failing to keep good records for each client's account by forgetting to write your client's reference number on the trust account, not keeping a separate ledger for each client, or simply by misplacing a record is another common way that attorneys unintentionally break these Iolta rules. Your State Bar Association requires you to be able to show how much money each client has in their account at any given point in time. So it's really important that you have records at all times. And if you don't have them, or if you can't show them, you need to correct that as soon as possible. If you know that you've done any of these and you might need some help, you've mismanaged your Iolta, what should you do? First, we always recommend contacting a practice management advisor in your state. There are a ton of these out there, and they're there to support you. And they usually have experience dealing with Ioltas, and the rules in most states don't require them to report ethics violations to the bar. So you don't have to worry that you're going to get reported, especially if it was just a silly mistake. If you're just starting out and you think that you've set up your accounting the wrong way, talk to a professional accountant who has experience dealing with Ioltas. And if you don't have time to manage your own bookkeeping and are thinking of hiring outside help, make sure to hire a bookkeeper who has experience with law firms such as Bench. We do a portion of the trust accounting, but we also recommend that a lot of our clients find a trust accounting specific software. So we typically recommend Clio for something like that, and they have a really great software.
Hey, Rachel, I have a quick question from one of the registrants. She asks, are charitable contributions made by businesses 100% deductible to the business?
That is a great question, and the answer is it depends. So always talk to your, I think there's a threshold depending on your income of your business. So always connect with your CPA or your bookkeeper, and they'll be able to give you an exact answer. I think a lot of times with deductions, the answer is going to be it depends.
Got it.
Yeah. Perfect. And then the last topic that I quickly wanted to go over here was how to prepare for next year. So if you have completely missed the boat on this year, you still have time. There's still a month or two, depending on what entity structure you have. And there are solutions to get you caught up really quickly. But if you are looking to kind of be better prepared for next year, there are a few things that we always recommend. So one mainly is keeping your monthly books up to date. So having bookkeeping throughout the year, there's so many benefits of it, but it's really just going to cause so much relief come next tax season. If you do, for any reason, get audited, the burden of proof is on you to prove anything that the IRS asks you. So having your books in order is just going to make this so much easier rather than having to scramble and figure things out when you're also trying to run your business. Next tip would be keeping your receipts. So as I mentioned, this is extremely important. If you have any cash transactions over $75, the IRS requires, or sorry, not cash transactions. If you have any transaction of an expense that's over $75, the IRS requires that receipt of that item. And then as well, if you want to deduct anything, you have to keep those receipts as well. And keeping those receipts would be, you can still do those through digitizing them. You can also take advantage of some deductions. So as I said, retirement savings and charitable donations. And this can really reduce your taxable income. However, this has to be done before January 1st. So preparing for next year, you will be able to use those deductions. And I did mention this briefly. I wanted to go into a little bit more detail, was figuring out if you owe quarterly taxes. So depending on how long you've been in business, depending on what your income is, how many employees you have, that sort of thing, you may owe quarterly taxes, and paying quarterly taxes is going to really help reduce your year-end tax bill. So we really recommend doing this. There are so many variables that play into it though, so look online and see if you have to pay quarterly taxes, and use a tool to calculate how much you owe. It may kind of seem like a bit of a pain throughout the year, but trust me, it will make tax time so much easier and so much less expensive for you. And then lastly is the saving aspect. So start saving for your next tax bill. So if you haven't already, start saving for this year. You still have a month or two. It's better to start putting aside money now, so it won't be such a huge chunk next year, or sorry, come tax time. And then next year, start putting money aside every single month. And as I said, about 30% of your income, we recommend putting that away into a separate savings account, just so it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. And hopefully next year that you'll have a little bit left over that you can either invest or use for anything you want. And that's everything. So we have quite a bit of time left here still, so I wanted to open it up to some questions, and it looks like we had a couple in the chat here.
Yeah, we had one, and you did a good job of answering it, so I think we're good there. But if anyone else has any questions, we do have some time, and Rachel's been very generous with her time, so please feel free to ask any questions that you have, and we'll do our best to answer them. But we would love some feedback for sure. What are the most common, when you guys take on a firm, what are the most common issues that you have as far as like just getting them up to speed?
I think a lot of times lawyers don't necessarily understand all of the aspects of trust accounting. It can be a little bit confusing, and even for myself, I'm actually working with Clio directly right now to kind of figure out the trust accounting piece. There's not really a solution that you can kind of do it all in one place. So, and the bar associations have different rules from state to state, so that can be a little bit confusing. And then as well, I think just really the organization factor. People come in and think, oh, I don't have everything set up, I'm not ready to go. So they put it off and put it off and put it off. And then when they come to sign up with us, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so unorganized, and they have to grab all these documents. So, getting started as soon as possible is always better. However, our team is really great at walking you through step by step. Like, we have great teams who are super patient here that are going to make sure that everything's set up, that you feel good about being organized, and that you feel good about tax time in your finances.
What are kind of some of the first things, I'm asking more questions than anybody else here. Sure. So what are some of the first things that you recommend for somebody who, but just, I know a lot of attorneys, they have essentially, I feel like they have 2 or 3 full-time jobs, from running a business to being an attorney to, everything and everything else they do. So what are the steps to getting prepared for working with someone like your company?
Honestly, I don't think that you really do need anything to get prepared. I think the sooner the better. As I kind of mentioned, the opportunity cost of outsourcing something like bookkeeping is huge, especially for lawyers who are sometimes charging $100, $200 an hour. If you really think about how much a subscription to something like Bench, where it's kind of just completely off of your plate for $150 flat fee a month, that's typically only an hour or 2 of someone's time, where a lot of times lawyers will be spending 3, 4, 5+ hours on bookkeeping, thinking that they're saving costs, but really they're not. So I don't really think that there's anything that clients need to be super prepared, other than really just having access to their online bank accounts. We connect everything and grab everything that we need on usually a 30-minute phone call, and that's pretty much it.
We do have a couple more questions. The first one is, can you repeat the amounts for deductions for employee meals?
Yes. I'm just pulling up here. So if you are providing meals for employees, you can deduct 50% of that. If you're providing meals at an office party or like a social event, you can actually deduct 100% of that. If you are working with a client or have a lunch meeting or something like that, it depends on how much you can deduct, but definitely making sure that you're keeping documentation of everything, so that you can hand that off to your bookkeeper or your tax preparer. Typically, we tell clients, like, don't worry about how much you can deduct from this. Like, we'll take care of that side of things, as long as you provide the information so that we know that this was a meal that was spent like at a client lunch or something like that.
Okay, then the next question was, do you have any recommendations on how to track business use of personal vehicles?
Yeah, there are a lot of great tools out there. I don't know specifically the details on how much you can deduct. So again, recommend chatting with a bookkeeper. I'm sure there are a lot of resources online for that as well, but there are some tools. I'm pretty sure you can use QuickBooks. I know we always recommend Mile IQ or Expensify.
Yeah, Expensify is a great app. If no one's used it, they should check it out. I've used it several times. How many attorneys do you work with currently, and what's your, I guess, what are your plans for the future? Do you guys plan on offering any further services or expansive services?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we work, I don't know the exact number, but I'd say probably about, legal is one of our top verticals that we work with. However, we do work with over 45 different types of industries. So I would say about 10% of our client base is lawyers. And as I mentioned, we're actually working with Clio to kind of better understand how we can support our legal clients in managing their trust accounting and making sure that they're 100% compliant as an all-in-one solution, rather than having to bounce around to a couple different solutions. So that is in the works right now. I can't talk too much about the details, but we will definitely let you guys know, Travis, as soon as that's launched. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Should be happening over the next couple months.
Excellent, that's great.
Travis, was there anything in my presentation that surprised you around how to manage your Iolta or how to prepare for tax season?
Not really, because I think I myself have hired a professional to help me with my business taxes, which was the smartest thing that I've ever done. And so it really took a lot of the pressure off, and I've been understanding how much I didn't know about finances. And I thought I was very knowledgeable about finances, but it's amazing what you don't have to worry about when you hire someone like Bidge, who really does a great job. And I just can't stress enough how affordable that you are, and the services you provide, the quality of service. It's amazing that you guys can do it at that price point and a flat fee. So it's not a pitch. It's just, it really is an exceptional service. And for those of you who are not taking advantage of it, or you think it's, it's just that maybe you're too new for it, trust me, you're not. I mean, even the smallest firms that I've worked with could use your services and would benefit greatly from it. It just frees up your time and stress and everything else. We have one other question here just popped up. So sorry to cut my own self off here. So, but what documents or categories of documents should be kept, and for what periods of time?
I'm not 100% sure what you mean. Do you mean like receipts, bank statements, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I'm going to assume it's any financial documents. Yes, she said yes.
That is a great question. I believe it's 3 years, but for some reason the number 7 is popping into my head. So I want to make sure I'm giving you guys the most accurate info. So let me look into that, and I can follow up with Travis on that. There is information on our blog that you can find how much. There's different documents that you're going to need for depending on what entity structure that you are, that you would need in case of an audit. So it really depends again. So you can look online and all those answers will be on our blog as well.
And that's another huge benefit of using a professional service is they typically keep a lot of that stuff organized for you. So if you do, yeah, I mean, it's a way to force yourself to, I did it as a way to keep myself accountable to being organized, especially with my finances. And it's really paid off.
Yeah, once someone sets up their bench account, even if they cancel, they always have access to the documents that have been in there. So we provide IRS ready financials every single month. So anything that's in there will be with you forever.
Well, that's great. That's great information.
I did want to go back quickly to what you had said about hiring a professional. And, you know, CPAs go to school for a pretty substantial amount of time, as do lawyers. So you can imagine if someone who was running a business tried to do the legal things on their own. Obviously, you guys as lawyers understand how difficult this could be. So I think that bookkeeping and tax preparation could kind of be similarly compared. Not quite, there's not as quite as much schooling, but people go to school for years and years to figure all these things out. So don't try and take that onus on yourself. Really recommend just outsourcing this and just not having to worry about it.
Yeah, I agree. And we got one more question, and it's pretty, I think you could, this is a great question. Can you explain how bench works?
Absolutely. So I'll walk you through the kind of onboarding experience first. So once you sign up, one of our onboarding specialists will reach out to you within a few minutes. They'll get you set up on the account. They'll walk you through they'll ask a few questions about your business, make sure the bench is going to actually be the solution that you need. And if so, they'll walk you through everything that you're going to need. So they'll grab statements, set up connections. Typically, with the bench account, we can actually connect directly to your bank or your merchant processor so that we can pull all those statements every single month automatically. We then get you set up for a free trial. So we complete 1 month of historical bookkeeping, so any of the last 3 months, and we complete that in 1 business day so that you can actually have your numbers in our platform, and we'll do a walkthrough with you to show you our software, show you all the features, and show you your own books before you decide if you want to go forward. If you do choose to go forward, that would be when your subscription would be set up and we would set you up with a bookkeeper. At that point, we always recommend connecting about once a month just to make sure everything's accurate and up to date. And the bookkeeper pretty much does everything. So they'll grab your statements, do all the reconciliation. They'll reach out if they have any questions or anything like that, but it's really hands-off process. And the pricing is based off of your monthly expenses. So if your law firm, say, spends like $10,000 a month, it's based solely off of that, not off of the amount of work that we're doing. So you can know that regardless of how much work it is, this is going to be your flat fee. And we guarantee that price for an entire year as well, regardless of if your expenses increase. Another quick thing I did want to mention, I mentioned this briefly during the webinar, is that we recently launched Bench Tax. So this is an additional service that we just launched at the beginning or the end of last year. And this is essentially an outsourced CPA. So we get you your account set up. It's another about 30-minute phone call to get your bench tax set up. And your bookkeeper here will work with an outsourced CPA to get everything prepared, calculated, and filed for you. And we'll ensure that it's done by the appropriate deadline. We also have some really great videos online of how it works, and I'm always happy to connect with any of you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to connect via email or hop on a quick call as well.
Do they always work with the same bookkeeper?
Typically, yeah. So they'll get paired with one main point of contact, and there's actually 3 bookkeepers on every bookkeeping team, just to kind of have a second and third set of eyes, or in case that main point of contact, say, goes on vacation or transitions to a different role or transitions out of bench, there's always going to be someone here that's familiar with your books.
Oh, that's smart. That's very smart. Well, this has been, the Q&A has actually been very thorough. So I love it when people ask questions. It typically gives, I mean, it's hard to cover everything in a presentation when you're doing all the talking. So The Q&As are always wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
So folks, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat with the Q&A, and we'll get it to Rachel, and we'll make sure that we get an answer to you. But if we don't get any more questions in the next few minutes, we're going to send out a recording of the webinar, and we'll include all of Rachel's contact information, so you guys can reach out to Rachel, connect with her, ask her further questions, or obviously if you don't work with them, then I'm sure she'll direct you to the right person to get that started. So this has been great information. I think there's a definite need in the space, especially for small firms, and this is definitely a very affordable service. I can't stress that enough what you do. And the tax piece is a great addition. I'm excited that you guys added that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the tax piece is also interesting because we decided to price it throughout the year. So we do a monthly fee rather than a year-end fee. And we found this to be really valuable to clients because it kind of takes a little bit of that burden of that March or April huge chunk of cash that you're going to have to spend for filing your taxes. So it's another really interesting piece of that. And we also have a really affordable price for bench tax, and it starts at around $600 for your filing, which is pretty crazy. Typically, if you're working with a CPA directly, it can cost in the thousands. So.
Well, again, that's a great value add, but yeah, that's wonderful. Well, do you have anything that you want to add? I am fresh out of questions, and I don't see any questions popping in the Q&A. So if there's anything that you want to wrap up with, or any information you want to provide, we can probably cut a little bit short. We're just about, we have about 15 minutes left, but I'm out of questions. So I will leave it to you to maybe wrap this up, and we can send this out to our members, and hopefully start driving more business your way.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I think that was everything from me, Travis. Thank you so much for having me. Again, if anyone has any questions, I'm always happy to connect. Any questions around, trust accounting or Iolta, I'm the go-to person here. I'm definitely not a pro, but I can help you find the right answers. Any bookkeeping or tax-related questions as well, always happy to connect. So thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure as always, Travis.
No, thanks for taking the time, and thanks for everyone who joined us today. We really appreciate your time. Hopefully this was another helpful webinar. And again, Bench is a partner of the AEA. We value them. They provide a great service, and we highly recommend that you use them. And if you use them, refer your friends to them as well, because everyone's going to benefit from this. So it's a wonderful service. And again, it couldn't be more affordable. So Rachel, thank you for your time, and thank you for everyone who joined us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much.